My balls hurt so bad, like so bad.
Sam Fricker, an Olympic diver, successful entrepreneur, and social media star, transformed from a young, insecure kid into an Olympian.
When I was very young, I got in a lot of trouble. I didn't have much direction, and I was quite a lost kid.
Diving became his escape, turning the pain of bullying and insecurity into unwavering strength.
It was through diving that gave me a way to really build myself up and foresee my potential. And eventually I made like some national event. I told one of the Olympic coaches that I was going to make the Olympics. He said he'd never had a kid come up and tell him that. So he took interest in me and started coaching me.
But in the midst of his journey to greatness, tragedy struck.
The year before I made the Olympic Games, I had one of my biggest failures. I made one mistake in a competition, landed flat on my back, and you just go in shock. So sore and it's so painful.
That hurts.
The media and people turned their lens on him, eager to find flaws.
Morning Herald writes stuff about me, not very nice. It sucks.
Despite these challenges, Sam remained dedicated to his routine and daily practices.
You don't have a choice. You've got to get up and go to training and do what you can.
I'm doing this not just for myself, but for my mum, for my family, for my coach, for my team, for my country.
I come back 2 years later and won it, and I've achieved that dream.
His journey of self-growth and determination has inspired billions both in sports and beyond.
How do you take it all in and go, what's best for me?
A lot of people tend to point to just doing one thing and don't focus on anything else. It's never been my approach, and I've never had it work for me. I've always found more success by...
So you've been training your whole life for one moment, which is to make the Olympics. The moment that you found out that you didn't make it, how did you deal with that? What was what happens? What's the process? How do you go through it for the next week, the next month? I want to know what's the psychology and the mindset behind that.
I think when you get to a point where you know you've done everything you can and more, then you end up being okay with the situation. Because you're like, coming into this, I did everything I could mentally, speaking to a psychologist, coming up with a mental plan, visualizing those dives, training hard, everything your coach says to do and more, doing extra things in the gym, imitations. I think once you've done everything you can, sometimes it works and sometimes you make the Olympics and it all comes together and sometimes it doesn't. And just knowing you've done the work, it at least makes you feel okay that happened. It hurts, but I know it's not because I didn't put in the work.
So when you say it hurts, how do you deal with that? Because it's all very logical now because it's after that point in time.
Yep.
But there must have been, I remember hearing about it and my heart sunk for you. I was like, fuck, all of that work, all of that stuff. And because I've known you for a while and, we've done a little bit of work together as well, I felt bad.
It's really tough. The Olympic trials go for nearly a week. And the first two competitions I did, I was behind and I knew I had to make up points. And the night before, the final day, where I already basically knew I was out, but you still need to show up and compete. You feel sick, you're in bed and you're thinking about it. Very few things keep me up at night, but that kind of stress sometimes does. But you find ways to deal with it. You get used to dealing with that kind of pressure. And when things don't go your way, I've had that happen countless times in my life. People see all the success, they see me posting all the highs, and I try to share some of the lows, but the really low points, I'm not whipping out a camera to film it. I'm getting through it. I'm punching through it. I'm getting down the dirt. And a lot of the times I don't share those moments because pulling out a camera isn't what I'm thinking about. It's how am I going to get through this? And I've had to build strategies. Missing out in the Olympics was tough, but there's been harder losses in my career that I've been through that set me up to deal with big losses like that. And I remember there was this time in Spain where I went out there and I failed the dive. And then I had to be there for the whole week. Then had to fly, takes nearly 2 days to get home. And the whole time you're on the plane, you're thinking about the mistakes that you've made. And the ways I've found to deal with that, for me at least, is I get a book, I get my pen, and I just start writing down my plan, my goals, my plan, and I start immediately. I think the second I got home from the Olympic trials and I didn't make it, I wrote a new plan. I got straight back to it. I didn't sit around crying, didn't whinge about it. I got on with it. So
you said that there were harder times that you'd been through. Can you walk us through some of those? Because you've been in diving now for a fair while and been an athlete for a while. Obviously, these strategies aren't something that just happen straight away. And I think, you know, as working in mental performance and human psychology and things like that, something that I find is that most people really struggle with failures. And sometimes it's the smallest thing, you know, like something just goes wrong in a week and someone flies off the handle and they get upset, and, you know, it's that road rage incident on the way home from work. Or, you know, it could be get home and have this huge argument with your partner because something at work happened that just triggered you. You've learned a lot of these strategies. Like, I don't think most people can comprehend what it's like to put your whole life into something in order to not get the result that you wanted. Like, that's pretty devastating. But the way that you've just communicated that you handled it was like pretty empowering and pretty thought-provoking. Run us through like how you learned to work through that as a youngster to, you know, teenage years to adult years, because I'm assuming it wasn't always like that.
No, in fact, when I was very young, I got in a lot of trouble. I didn't have much direction, and it was through diving that gave me a way to really build myself up and foresee my potential. I was quite a lost kid. Got in a lot of trouble because I didn't really know what to do. But no one ever sees the really tough times that I've had throughout diving. But those have made me who I am. Those are what makes me strong enough to have any setback. And it's not that it doesn't bother you at all, but you just continue anyway. Like, I think everyone gets upset when they fail at something, and that's okay. But you just have to keep going no matter what. And through my diving, there's been so many losses along the way. And I've achieved my biggest dream. I've become an Olympian. I'm a 3-time Australian champion and won a Commonwealth Games medal. And that's the things that people remember.
Yep.
But the toughest times, like my first international comp, I went out there, and because you win all the domestic comps, you get used to winning. And then you go to the international scene and you're at the bottom again. And I had this dive and I completely belly flopped it. And I felt like such a loser. I felt like the biggest flop.
You literally belly flopped it?
No, I mean, like, I literally, like, my balls hurt so bad. Like, so bad.
There's something for Instagram. My balls hurt so bad. Sam Fricker.
They did. I think I got a free vasectomy. Like, it was pretty tough. Still, yeah, no, I think it's all good now. I think it's okay. But yeah, and then again, you're so far away from home because Australia's so far. You then
that could be your new nickname, One Nut Sam.
No, I took out both. There's no protection from one. Like when you're coming down at 60 k's an hour onto your balls, they're both getting hit.
Yeah.
You're not even salvaging one. It's like a stinging sensation too. Like it just stings. And then if you
I'm
hit
assuming some of the listeners know, but it wasn't from diving. That's for sure. They had that stinging sensation.
Oh, it sucks. It sucks. But those moments of not achieving what you wanted to achieve build resilience. Like that comp in Dresden, I come back 2 years later and won it and become the first Australian to win that event.
Wow.
In that men's 10 platform. And I've had all kinds of setbacks like that. Even learning a new dive, it's terrifying because you do all the build-ups, right? Say you're doing a front 4.5, you do a 2.5, you do a 3.5. And then to do the 4.5, that's
4.5 rotations.
Yes.
Yep.
There's no in-between except for just sending it. That's how you find out.
Wow. And so you go and do that. Like, I mean, my brain's just even boggling thinking about it. Like I've jumped off of the 10 meter before, and my ass was twitching like you wouldn't believe. I think, I'm not sure whether I hit the water first or the shit that I had coming out, my pants. But, 10 meters a big dive, and most people just pin drop off, and even then that can hurt. How do you mentally prep for it when you're going to do a new trick and you're at that height? Obviously you do the training on the mats and everything like that. But when you get up there, walk me through the thought process. So you're standing up on top of the board. You're about to, is that what you call it, board?
Yeah, platform, board.
Platform. You're about to jump. What happens in your head just before that to set yourself up and to make sure that you're not thinking about your balls smashing the water, belly flopping, tearing your, stomach open?
Yep.
I'm sure there's been plenty of crazy stories of people who've done dumb shit when they dive.
Certainly.
How do you prep for that and not put that in your mind?
When you're on the edge of the board, you have 110% commitment. Like no matter what happens, I'm going for this 100%. If I get hurt, I get hurt. I'm going to do whatever it takes. So even when I was learning my scariest dives, you're terrified. You are but you just do it anyway. And you just have this mindset of whatever it takes, I'll just do it. So when you're doing those scariest dives, you approach them with 100% commitment. Anything but is more dangerous, because if you half commit, you're more likely to get hurt. So when you're up on the board, you kind of take a breath. You remember what you have to do. I have keywords for each dive. So say it's the front 4.5. I just think quick jump, squeeze tight. And then that's all I think about. I try to stay peaceful. And then you run to the edge, and you just got to give it commitment, 110%. And if not, you can get hurt. You can even get hurt when you give it 110%. But that's just part of it as well. I think you've also got to accept that there are risks that come with it, and accept that if something goes wrong, I have the skills to be able to deal with it and rebuild it back up. Because nearly the scariest thing is you're up there, committed, you do the dive, you completely butcher it and you hurt yourself. And then the toughest thing is not the physical pain, but the mental fortitude to be able to go back up there and try the exact same thing you got hurt on again and again and again until you figure out how to do it. And that can last months. Some of the dives, I remember the back 3.5 I learned, it took me nearly years to master. So I'd be wiping out, maybe once a week, once a month, quite severely. And your whole life, you just get used to dealing with that level of stress and that level of pressure. So I find when it comes to all my business stuff, I'm so used to dealing with such high pressure environments with my diving and having my safety on the line every day that nearly any business issue or thing that comes up doesn't seem to faze me.
That's amazing, because that's something that I talk a lot about with entrepreneurs or business owners. So many of them say, I want my business to work, but then their first focus is, well, cash flow sucks, the government's changed something, this is happening, and they focus all on the negative stuff, and then they wonder why things don't work out. So it's the same principles, right? Like, you just got to commit, you got to go for it, and you got to make it work. And if it doesn't work, you just got to keep going until it does.
Certainly. Even when I've had my biggest successes, it hasn't even been from perfect training. Like, it was the mindset of, this dive isn't working, that's not perfect, my technique at the moment isn't great, but I'm going to do it anyway. And you don't have a choice. Like, you're coming to a competition, if you're struggling with a certain dive, you have to play it cool, pretend everything's fine, and act as if it's fine, and compete as if it's fine. So even when things aren't perfect, and they never are, you just have to find ways to piece it together. And focusing on one of my favorite ways to think about it is whenever those negative thoughts come in about what if this happens, what if that happens, I think, what if it works? What if we do it? What if we achieve that dream? That's awesome. That's how you achieve them. Yeah,
awesome. What's the biggest failure that you've had that's like been the most devastating for you? And then how did you walk yourself through that experience? Was it a business transaction? Was it a family relationship? Like, was it sport? Like, what's been the thing that you feel has been the biggest challenge?
The year before I made the Olympic Games, I had one of my biggest failures. I flew out to Spain. My training was perfect. Training couldn't have been better. I was feeling good. We'd just come off a national event. I was healthy, and I made one mistake in a competition, split-second decision. I spotted the roof when I should have seen the water. I kicked out at the wrong time, landed flat on my back, and you just go in shock. It's tough to explain. It's like you've been hit by a train. Like, you just go in shock, and it's like, what have I done? And I remember swimming to the edge. You like struggle to breathe a bit, and you don't really understand why you made that mistake, because sometimes it just happens. Sometimes mistakes just happen. And my coach was like, did you want to pull out? Like, you okay? I was like, nah. I finished the competition and nearly made the final as well, kept pushing. But that was one of my biggest failures. And the same way I got through that was learning to deal with that rubbish, like just learning to deal with it. You feel all over the shop, and you are all over the shop, and then finding ways to piece it back together and come up with a new plan. And that's when I write things down of like what I'm going to do, because it always comes back on me. If something doesn't work, I've got to figure out how to fix it.
So you've been essentially hit by a train by smashing your back down from, how high was it, a 10?
Yeah, 10-meter platform. You hit the water over 60 k's an hour. And like, I've seen people collapse their lungs. Like, I've broken my wrists from diving 10 meter. At the moment, I got an injury in my back. So it's all pretty impactful.
How do you think through that process of like, these injuries are there, I've got to get back up and keep going? Because that blows my mind that with that type of injury, I mean, I've seen staff members get a paper cut and have to go home from work. Like,
yeah,
you know what I mean? Like,
I'll give you an example now.
Yeah, please do.
My lower back, I have a bulging disc, and it's been affecting me for 4 or 5 months. So every day I get up, it's a sharp pain that really hurts when I like bend over and do certain things. And I've been going to training every day anyway, and having to find ways to stay fit. For example, I cannot dive. I couldn't even jump at the moment. So we go there and we ride the bike for an hour, which sucks, but it's all I can do. Like, I didn't sign up to become a cyclist, you know. But if it's what I have to do to stay in shape for the moment, it's what I'll do. And I got to do hours of these extremely boring ab exercises, but they have to be done. And when you're in so much pain, you just want to stay home and lay in bed, or just stay at home and do your work. Like, it's tough to come to training when it's not even just training. You're in a lot of pain, and a sharp pain that's really difficult to manage. But you just kind of break it down to, okay, I just got to show up today. I just got to ride the bike for this hour. I just got to do these abs, and I try to break it down and just take it one thing at a time. And having a good support network around you helps with those things. But it is tough. It is really hard. But you don't have a choice.
I like that, because what you're saying is, in those moments that shit gets real, you just go back to the fundamental principles of just stay in the habit.
Yeah.
Don't bail on the habit, wait for the perfect day.
Yeah, David Goggins, one of his favorite things, stay hard, stay in the fight, stay in the fight. Like, just 99% of it's just hanging in there.
Yep.
Some of my biggest successes have come after the biggest losses, just by hanging in there, just by not giving up.
That's awesome. Diet. How important is diet, do you think, on your psychology when you're competing? Have you ever like just blasted a whole bunch of food after like a competition or whatever, and noticed that there's been massive impacts on how you rock up mentally the following days or the following week? Do you think that there's a correlation between diet and your psychology and your mindset, and then how you perform physically? What are your thoughts? Like, I know most people go, yeah, well, like, diet definitely affects a person physically.
Yeah.
But I want to know, from an athlete's perspective, do you think that that has an impact, or there's a correlation there between how you show up mentally as well?
As a diver, as long as I'm fit and can dive well, I don't really think about my diet too much. Like, I try to generally eat healthy, but I do have quite a sweet tooth. So I love a lolly, I love chocolates, love cakes and things like that. And I never splurge too much to a point where it's detrimental to my performance. But I do allow things like diet as a bit of a gateway to not be too stringent. I think if you're too rigid on everything, if you're too rigid, you break. So some things have to be rigid. Training has to be rigid. But if I make my diet super rigid, I find that makes my whole life too rigid, which can set you up for, I believe, being overstressed. So a diet's something I try to be relaxed about. I'm sure it does affect your high performance.
Okay.
But as a general gist too, when you train hard, you want to eat good.
Yep, 100%. Something that you also do extremely well, like, your life is pretty busy. I mean, I messaged you yesterday and said, I'm in Sydney, do you want to do a podcast? And you said, here's my schedule.
Yeah.
Then we quickly rushed to try to squeeze you in. You're like, I'll be there. And that was like less than an hour ago.
Yep.
You move very quick through life, and you get shit done. How do you fit in training? Plus, like, as long as I've known you, you've been cranking TikTok and social media and all that sort of stuff. You've got a very strong media presence as well. Like, now I've noticed you're doing things with television and all that type of stuff. You've got your own podcast. Then, throw on top of that as well, you've got a fair bit of travel. So, I mean, travel takes it out of just an average person.
Yep.
How do you piece it all together? Like, how do you figure out, training's obviously important and a priority, but then also TikTok and social media is a priority because it, gives you,
and
yeah,
it's my dream.
And then you've also got media. You've got some stuff that you said you're doing with the government and stuff as well. How do you fit it all in?
I think just a really intense work ethic. Like, I wake up, I go training. I train for 2 hours. I come home, I work. I work until I go back to training. And I train for another 2-3 hours. And then I come home and I work until I go to bed. But I love it. I wouldn't want to be doing anything else. I enjoy the hustle. I enjoy the challenge. I enjoy the fight to be better and the fight for an exciting future and a future that I want to build for myself. So I think being able to enjoy what you do allows me to do it. If I didn't enjoy parts of it, I couldn't do it.
What are the parts you don't enjoy?
There are parts I don't enjoy. And as I become more successful and can outsource things and can fund things like that, for example, editing. I've been trying to outsource editing because I didn't particularly enjoy that. You find ways to get the team to help you with things you really don't like. Another thing I hate doing is writing concepts for videos. hate doing it. But you find someone that loves doing it, and these can all work together. So I also find the more successful you are, the more time you can spend doing the things you truly love, because you can outsource the part that you don't.
That's awesome. What are the parts that you don't enjoy? Like you said, the video editing.
Editing, I don't particularly
What else?
love.
In life in general.
I used to enjoy it more, but as I've become more busy, I don't enjoy it as much. Writing video concepts is not my favorite. And I can tell you, some days you don't even want to go training, but you just do it because it's what you do. Like, discipline gets me through everything. I'd say you get up and are excited to go training maybe half the time. But most of the time you're tired because you've trained every single day. So it's just that discipline. And after, you feel better and you're glad you did it and you have respect for yourself because you did what you meant to do. But I try not to listen to my feelings and just follow what actions need to be done. That's
super powerful. That quote there alone is just worth the whole podcast.
Yeah.
How do you deal with that? The emotions are kicking in, you're tired, you don't want to go to training. I assume that there's like the little voice inside your head that's saying, you know, we could just stay home, because you probably could.
Yeah.
You probably don't have to go to training. It's only one training session that you're going to miss, right? But that's a bad path that most people take. How do you think through that?
And sometimes if something's really important, like I've got a business meeting I've got to go to and it outweighs that training session significantly, I will take that business meeting, depending on what it is. But if I need to be at training, I will be there. And I think it just comes down to routine, habit, and discipline. And having the coaches there for accountability, that helps too. So I think between those things, when I wake up in the morning, it's not even a choice. It's not even an option. You just go to training. Like, it's not something I've ever thought twice about. It just is what it is. I get up, I train.
So you've created almost like these habits that then become rituals, and then that's just the way that it is.
Certainly. And that protects me. Like, sometimes I look in the mirror and of course I'm happy with like my physique, even though I've been injured, try and stay healthy. And you even sometimes forget, oh yeah, I'm fit. You're like, yeah, but it's because of those rituals that put you there. And once you do them enough, it becomes habit, and you got your coach there keeping you accountable. Like when I first injured my back, I remember jumped on the bike. I was like, oh, I'll do 20 minutes. And he comes over. He's like, stay there for an hour. Okay. And that's what you just do every day. So you also have those coaches that guide you and tell you what to do, and you just do it.
How many coaches do you have in your like arsenal?
I got my like direct diving coach, and he sits next to another head coach, and they work together, which is great. I feel like that's a really good environment. And then we have our strength coaches, our physios, dietitians that pull everything together, and we got masseuses as well. But my main coach is my point of contact, and he's a bit stressed at the moment because I can't dive.
It's good to hear, because I think I remember when I first started in this space, and I remember going to sporting teams and they would go, we don't need people to work on mindset and things like that. You know, we've got a strength and conditioning coach and so on. And I go, look, most athletes are training in a similar way. They're doing the same sort of thing. They're eating the same foods. Like, you guys have mastered that, but the big gap is in the mindset psychology. And they looked at me like I was fucking weird.
Really?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, we're talking, 15 years ago now. Whereas now that seems to be a lot more of a common thing. And I think that in the business space, there's still this almost thought process of we don't need coaches because we're business owners and coaches are just idiots or whatever. But I think it's such an untapped resource, because if you look at athletes have this team of people around them. It's not one person, it's a team.
It is.
But a lot of business owners, they'll say, I've got a coach. But that coach, they can't be across all things. And so I think business owners now are starting to realize that you need someone who's an expert at finance, someone who's an expert at social media, or you've got to have these experts around you in order to give you different bits of advice and feedback.
Certainly.
That moves me into the next question though. How do you, when you're getting advice from different coaches, how do you take it all in and summarize it and go, what's best for me?
That's a really good question. And I think, especially with socials, like the more people that know you, the more people have advice. Everyone tells you their free advice, and you listen to it. I have my advisors, people that I go to when I'm on the fence about anything. If I'm unsure about something, I always reach out to an expert, whether that's a lawyer, an accountant. Like, I always make sure I ask the right people before making really important decisions. and then I listen to everyone and then make my own decision based on the information I have at hand. Because that way, and I've always been like this, I'm happy to make the final decision because then I can own whatever happens, whether it's good or it doesn't work. Because even if it doesn't work, at least I know I'm not blaming anyone. That decision was on me. So I like to listen to everyone around me and then make the final call.
Do you think that's having a strong emphasis on social media, because you spoke about being on there and different people giving you advice, because you're so strong on social media, do you think that social media has an impact on your sporting career, or do you think that they work together, or do you think that one sort of takes away a little bit, or do you think that, you know, diving hinders you a little bit from your social media aspirations and your media aspirations? How does that work?
It's really funny because even just in diving, we have two different things. We have platform and springboard. And I've always found I've been a better diver when I do both. And I've always had everyone tell me I've got to focus on one. I've had the same thing with my sport and business. Everyone says you just got to focus on diving. And then business people, you just got to focus on business. But I've always found by having multiple irons in the fire, by having a more complex system, things always work out better because you have more options to draw on. So I find everything helps one another. You have to have boundaries. For example, training takes priority, and during the hours of training, I'm there, I'm doing my job, and outside that, I do the work. Could I be a slightly better diver by sitting around and doing nothing all day, just resting and then going to training? I think no, because then you might overthink it. I think by being a well-rounded person, you become a more able to deal with everything in general. So a lot of people tend to point to just doing one thing and don't focus on anything else. It's never been my approach, and I've never had it work for me. I've always found more success building options and having different things to draw on. Even my Commonwealth medal that I was able to win, I was traditionally a platform diver. I went to the Olympics for 10 meter. Everyone saw me as a platform diver, but I wanted to do springboard, and I saw an opportunity in the Commonwealth Games for springboard, and I pushed hard for it, and everyone said just focus on platform, just do this. But I just saw that opportunity, and I knew that we could do it with my good friend Shishing. Mm-hmm. And just by backing yourself and having options, because I'd always trained it, it was still at a high enough level that when we went to the Commonwealth Games, we were able to go out there and win a medal. Had I just done what people sometimes say and just focused on platform, I wouldn't have that medal.
So interesting you say that, because I've only just realized that probably in the last 6 months. And I always used to be the 100% go all in on one thing. But what I actually found was it was more of a detriment to the way I operated both in business and in life versus having things more integrated. And only recently, Jess has been hassling me for 16 years to get a dog. And we got a dog, and it actually made me better in business and a better leader and a better coach. And I guess people probably ask why. But it's because you've got to have more patience. You've got to be really concise with your communication. And what I found was just having that one thing that I put off for years has actually made me better by being more integrated. And I think that's what you're talking about.
I couldn't agree more. Yeah. By being multifaceted and having multiple things gives you different perspectives on certain things. Like when you come to business or you have your diving, it makes your brain work differently. When I'm spinning around the air, twisting and flipping, trying to see where I am and execute the dive, my brain works differently to when I'm trying to problem solve in the business aspect or thinking of content ideas or reviewing edits that my team have done. But I think it all makes you a better person because you have more skills and more perspective to draw on every situation. I think it makes you more empathetic too. If you only know one thing and that's all you know, it's all you understand. But if you can have a few things going on, you're right, it makes you more patient, more understanding.
Yeah. With social media, I assume you have to deal with a lot of bullshit. I mean, I'm not...
I literally had the Sydney Morning Herald write stuff about me the other day that was not very nice.
Oh, really? Can you run us through that? Because I haven't seen the article. I don't know. But how do you deal with that? Because it's something... It took me a long, long time. I only think I probably figured it out in the last 12 months that everyone has their own opinion, and most of the people who do have one, it probably doesn't even matter anyway. But how have you dealt with going through that? I mean, you've got millions of followers and all that sort of stuff. I assume that almost everything you post, you get just absolute scumbags. We're talking the bottom of the barrel fucking douchebags just telling you that.
And sometimes they write some funny stuff. Sometimes they write
Go
something.
ahead. What's been some of the funniest?
Sometimes I'll read a hate comment and it'll generally crack me up. Some of them are really funny. I
Do you have any examples?
don't even know if I can repeat some of them, but
go
I
for it.
personally find them funny. I'll read them and I'll be like, it's kind of funny. And I wish I could like it or sometimes reply, but I try not to because I don't want to stir it up. But sometimes they're quite creative and quite funny. I have a laugh at those. And then outside of that, whether you get slammed by recently some of the media, I've always just found I love what I do and I focus on that. And whether it's people trying to pick on you at school, because, people always try to pick on different people at school. I kind of feel like I'm unbullyable, if you will. I just don't care. I don't care about so many things, but I only care about a few things. And those things I really care about and I'm super invested in. So all the other stuff is just noise. Doesn't bother me. Never has. I can have a laugh at it, which I think is good too. You got to be able to laugh at yourself and not take things too seriously. But I've never been fazed by it. And I couldn't put my finger on one thing and tell you why. I just never have. Never have.
Okay. With the media article that's come out, can you give us a rundown of what it is? Like, I haven't seen it.
Well, they were saying something about my podcast. So I make short form content. That's always been my strategy. And we had Peter Dutton on recently and we went out and we did 1.4 million with him for the 1 hour that he was there, which I think is great, especially for 1 hour of his time. And they picked the number of the long form on YouTube and said that the podcast didn't do great. But our strategic plan has always been, and like everything I post, short form content. And then, of course, recently I'm talking with some other people to come on and they'll reference the article. They're like, oh, well, the article says this. What do you think about that? It does suck, but I just explain to them. And I just know it's part of it. Whenever things happen that aren't good, it's like failing a dive. It's just part of it. But if you want to make the Olympics, if you want to play the game, like I'm happy to play the game. I find it all kind of fun. It's all part of the game. And that's the way I try and look at it all. A big game.
Does that impact or tarnish your view of the media knowing that you're getting into the media? Like, you're playing part of the media game, but then the media game's sort of playing you a little bit as well. How do you think through that and process that?
I think social media is powerful because it gives people like you and I a platform to share our truths and our perspectives, which can you imagine 100 years ago when we didn't have that, and then whatever, say, mainstream media say it is. But now you can make a video response, which is what I did, and corrected what I believe were the facts.
And so how did you correct that? And then what was the response from your audience? And did the media come back with a response or reply, or they just don't care?
Not yet.
Okay.
We'll see. But I just showed my numbers, went through. I read the article. Thought, oh, well, I'll go check. So I went through and counted all my numbers, put it all together, and then made a video response, showing the evidence.
So you had 1 million on short form, but the long form didn't have the views. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that with the cherry picking of information through the media? Because I guess if you get into that, is that something that you're aware of? Is that something that you're going to have to confront? Is that something that you're going to have to conform to? Like, how do you deal with that now, knowing that you're getting more and more into the media?
I think, as I said, owning your own social media platforms, no one can tap me on the shoulder and say, do this, do that, do this. No one can. I own it.
What about when you're on Channel 9 or you're on a TV show and they want you to, tweak things to try to get more viewers and is there an expectation for you to create that bullshit drama approach or anything like that, or you just don't care, you just stick to your guns?
Yeah, never happened to me, so
okay.
I've never had to deal with it. But when I commentated the Olympics, it was just me sitting there generally explaining what's happened, and that's when I do best. Just being myself, leaning into my expertise and chatting through things. But it upset me. It upset me that I felt like it didn't correctly represent the full picture, and it's all public information.
Yeah.
So I felt like it would have been very easy to check had they wanted to.
Why do you think they didn't want to?
You'd have to ask them.
That's a very political statement right there, or an answer. Well done on the media training. With your social media now, what's the direction and the angle that you're taking moving into the future as well? Because you've always been at the forefront, especially on TikTok and things like that. It's been super impressive watching how you create content and the amount of volume that you do and everything like that. What's the direction that you're going to in the future? Is it sticking on socials? Is it getting more on TV? Is it creating long form, or is it a blend of everything?
I think after I've seen everything play out these last couple of years, I think social media is more powerful than ever before. And I think it will become more powerful than ever before. I think it's going to continue to evolve. So I think that's my highest priority, just investing in the social media and my own social media platforms and trying to make better content. Like, I want to make better videos, more exciting videos, more content that I love to film. Like, it gets me up every day. It gets me excited. I enjoy the hustle. I enjoy, similar to my diving, it's never perfect. There's always a way to be better. And there's always shifting. I feel like social media is like this massive ocean that just shifts like a lake. You know, when the lake shifts over time, it moves because things are moving, and then you got to try to move with it. And I find it all a big game and a challenge, but a challenge that I enjoy being part of, and a game that I like being part of.
That's epic. How does it impact your family and friends close to you as well, being on social media? Like, was there resistance from family and how you put yourself out there? I know where I've been doing social media since like the early days of Facebook, but it's sort of like I go hot for a little bit and then go cold and then I go hot.
I always see your stuff. I thought it was always hot.
No, I definitely, mate, that's why I don't have millions of followers like you.
You're working on it.
I'm definitely working on it now because I have to really put in the effort and the energy. Before, I just used it as a way of, I guess, filling a pipeline. But for me, the thing that I love is I love teaching and coaching. So providing I can get clients from the social media side of it and help more people, that's the only thing I care about. But I never really took that seriously. Whereas now social media, I've realized, is a way of getting that information and helping people in a way where not everybody can afford what I do, or, not everybody has got to a level where maybe they can do my events or my seminars and stuff. But I know that my family had concerns being out there, putting shit out there, putting your life out there and everything like that.
Yeah.
How do you deal with it, especially now, like you're in the media? How does your family deal with it? How does seeing people talk shit about you, how does that impact them?
Even the other night, my mum said around the dinner table, the family was a little bit upset that things have been said, but they've always been very supportive. And even just knowing that they care makes me feel good. I trust them. One of my sisters who helps me do a little bit of work, I go to her and run things by her as well, and they're part of it. And my dad loves it too. He thinks it's great. So
he thinks it's great when you cop a bit of shit?
No, just the social stuff in general. Yeah. No, he thinks it's all good stuff. My dad's a builder, so he was a bricklayer and then got into building construction. So I grew up on building sites. I planned on being a builder myself. I was going to do a trade and then go the building route. They kind of excited me, and so I spent my childhood, running around, stepping on nails by accident. That's happened to me before, and climbing scaffolds and being a bit rugged like that. So it was a bit of a left-hand turn to be an Olympian and then be a social media creator like I am today. I never would have imagined it could have come this far, but having good supportive people around you makes everything possible. And being happy and positive yourself. I love my diving. I love what I do. So anything that comes my way is just part of the challenge. It's part of failing a diving training, getting back up and going again. When you get hit, it's just part of it.
So your family don't take it personally or feel like that? Because I
don't think they care. My siblings don't. Like, they love me and they want the best for me, but I don't they just see me as their brother. They don't see me as their, a creator or anything. Nor I don't think they really care either, Yeah. Like, they want me to be successful, but I don't think they... It's funny, when you know someone, you know them for who they are, not just for what they do.
That is very, very true. What got you into diving in the first place?
Like, it's a girl I liked.
No kidding.
Yeah, seriously.
Okay.
It's a good motivation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you start diving because of a girl. That's, I mean, it's not like your usual sport where you just get on a 100-meter track and have a bit of a jog around and shit like that. Like, you're actually doing something that could really damage your internal organs if you fuck up. How did you walk through that process, and what age were you?
So when I was young, I wanted to go to the Olympics. Like, that was my dream. I wanted to go to the Olympics, and I was doing gymnastics and trampolining, and then this girl was doing diving. So I wanted to go diving, and eventually I made like some national event, school nationals. It's the lowest level nationals, but I thought I was the best in the world. I was like, I'm good. This is me. I'm all right. My technique was terrible, by the way. I was not good, but I thought I was, and I thought, you know what? I'm going to go to the Olympics for this. And I told one of the Olympic coaches, just because I had a very blind optimism for achieving my dream, I told one of the Olympic coaches, that I was going to make the Olympics. And I think he said he'd never had a kid come up and tell him that. So he took interest in me and started coaching me. And eventually I moved to Sydney. I train with him today, and I've achieved that dream. I remember when I achieved that dream, it was at my home pool, and I was on the side of the pool looking up at the platform, and I just finished my last dive, and I was standing next to a well. I think I just cried, because it was the same spot I told him I was going to make the Olympics about 10 years earlier.
Wow.
And we did it.
That's amazing. You mentioned the idea of blind optimism. How many times have you had to have blind optimism in order to chase a dream in your life?
Everything I do, even now, I'd say even now, you need it. I think if you knew how hard it was going to be, you probably wouldn't do it. So you just, sometimes you don't want to know. You just got to dive in and start chipping away. It's always harder than you think. It's always way harder. But it's also, those rewards last a lifetime.
I love that. There was this idea of, in Marcus Aurelius's book, he talks about avoiding the passions and so on. And if you look at the term passion, the etymology of the word, it means to suffer. And I think it's because when we're passionate about things, we tend to over-exaggerate the upsides and not see the downsides. And I think that's that blind optimism in action, right? Like you want things to turn out the best, and so you just don't look at what it actually takes to do something.
I think it's needed though sometimes.
I agree.
To look at an opportunity and ask yourself, what if it works? What if it works?
I agree. How do you deal with your back injury now? So you're injured, you're out. I'm
on pause.
You're on pause. How do you work through that, having to go to training every day? And then how do you deal with the pain? How do you deal with all that when you've got such a busy schedule? You know, like what does that look like as you move forward? Like, do you have a game plan? What's the thought process? Are we seeing Sam back on the diving board? Or?
I want to make another Olympics. I want to keep diving for another 5-10 years. So I got to sort this out. And I'm thrown into a position where I've had an injury happen in my back that I don't want, and I have no choice but to deal with it. And sometimes you just want to sit at home because it's so sore and it's so painful just to do small things like putting on your shoes. But you don't have a choice. You've got to get up and go to training and do what you can, even if it's the smallest movements. Like at the moment I do these exercises, we call them dead bugs. You like just move one arm.
I know the ones.
They're so boring.
I'm 41. I have to do that. I have to do it before I train because my body's like a fucking brick these days.
Yeah, I reckon the physios give me out for anything. I reckon I come in with a headache and do some dead bugs. You know, they love them. But you just find ways to do what you can, do whatever you can. And some days, and it's so tough because I look at my competitors out there diving every day, learning new dives, progressing, and I'm just trying to do this movement, this ab movement on the side of the pool so I can walk properly. So then maybe I can jump next week. So then maybe in a month or two I can dive again. So it's really stripping things right back to just do what I can right here, right now to get through today. And then that will progress me to move forward next week, because it got better and then I pushed it too hard in training and it got way worse and then I couldn't dive again. And now I'm slowly trying to get better again. And then you've got this sharp pain in your back when you're working, training, you know, hanging out with your friends. They say I'm not really meant to go jet skiing and things like that, which I love to do, which of course isn't the worst thing in the world, but it affects your life. It affects your life.
Not that you would go jet skiing though with a bad back, right?
I could not imagine myself doing that. You know, especially not when the physio told me not to.
You said something really interesting there, because this is the mindset of most high performers, right? And our whole community is called the driven mofos, right? Because I believe that driven motherfuckers are different than the average person.
Yep.
Most people need to be told to work their ass off and to push harder and to not be a lazy piece of shit, essentially. But then you've got these sort of types of personalities, which I assume you are, I am, I know Jess is, that are like highly strung. There's always more shit to do. You're like trying to figure out how you can optimize every minute of every day, pushing yourself to the limits. But then you're almost on this razor edge, moment by moment, where it's like, how hard can I work before I burn myself out? How hard can I work before I obliterate my body? How far can I push my mental capacity before it just obliterates itself? It's almost like a performance race car. Now, for you, you said my body starts getting better or my back starts getting better and I push a little bit too hard, which is so common for a high performer. How now does your physios, your coach, everything like that, how do you manage that? Because there's a fine line of the athlete wanting to push themselves to get back to where they were. We don't want to regress too far, but at the same time, we have to manage those expectations. How do you and the team and everything deal with that?
It's tricky because if it feels better, I feel like if I don't do everything I can, I'm being lazy. Mm-hmm. So that's how I found myself pushing too far. And it's like everything in life, because I can always be busy doing more work. I try to listen to my body as best as I can. And look, I don't do it that great because I've been injured and I've been injured again because I wasn't listening. But I try to. I try to sleep, for example. Sleep's a really big one for me. That's how I avoid getting sick, because I just work so often that if I don't sleep and I don't eat well, then I get sick because I'm just pushing so hard. But I find by looking after the small things, being happy, looking after my sleep and eating well allows me to stay on that knife's edge of working as hard as I can without overdoing it and burning out. I don't think I've ever experienced burnout. I think because I love what I do so much and I also know when to look after myself when I need to, but it's the physical injuries that are tough because I've got a high pain threshold and I'll push through it until it's not good, because you kind of just hope that it feels better tomorrow. You're like, oh, let's do this bit today, it'll feel better tomorrow. But I've had all kinds of injuries throughout my career, but this has been, I think, the most difficult. And you try to listen to your body, you try to do everything right, and you try to just keep going as long as it takes. And it takes a while. It's like when you got a cold, and I hate being sick too. When I got a cold, I feel terrible for a day, 2 days, 3 days, a week. But when an injury starts pushing on 4 months, 5 months, it sucks.
I'll bet.
But you just stick to it. You don't have a choice.
So how do you manage those expectations and not push yourself too hard? Because you're essentially describing every driven motherfucker that I know, right? It's like if 10's good, 20's better. And if 20's better, then 100 has to be way better. It's that mindset of I can push more. Yeah.
And I was meant to go compete in New Zealand last month. I'm meant to go to the diving World Cups in the next couple of months, and I don't think I'm going to be able to because I haven't been able to dive properly in that long. So being optimistic about getting better, but also giving your body the time it needs to fully recover, because if I don't let it recover, it could be a problem for the rest of my life. So it's really tricky, and it's about finding that edge of how much I can do in training without pushing it. Even today in the gym, this morning in the gym, I woke up, thought my back feels good. My back feels good. I got out of bed without feeling a sharp pain this morning for like the first time in a while. I was like, I'm good. I go to the gym, I go too heavy in my squats, and then it gets really sore and sharp again. So even this morning, I push it too far. So I'm probably the worst person to ask that question to.
That's why I'm interested.
I'm not managing my body right. Mentally and work and diving, I can manage that. But injuries, it sucks because it's pain, because it's physical pain. It's like I can push through until you can't.
Yeah, that's why I'm asking, because it is such a common thing. And I think, the 10%ers out there get it. And I don't know where that threshold is. Like I work until I just can't work anymore. And then, I'm lying on the couch, like trying to figure out how to rest, but I don't have time to do that shit. Like I struggle with it, and I know most high performers do. So how does the coaching staff and the coaches and everything sort of make you manage it? Do they have a strategy with you? Do they talk through it with you? Do they create a long game plan, or how do they sort of figure out what's working and what's not working?
I go to my physio at the moment. I'm like, when am I going to feel better? They're like, well, we thought you'd feel better a month ago, 2 months ago, 3 months ago. So they just deal with it day to day. And we don't really have a long-term plan because we don't know whether it's going to get better in another month or it's going to take another 6 months. So we work on it day to day. We look at these competitions they want us to go to, and we say, look, yes, if I can dive. So it's really tricky because you're managing the expectations of yourself, your coaches who you want to dive well for, and Diving Australia, and you want to go out there and compete. I want to go and compete. That's my job. So when I can't go and do that, it's tough. And what's tricky is, again, you see everyone going and competing, doing new dives, pushing themselves, and I'm just trying to figure out how to do these ab exercises to fix my back, let alone thinking about how am I going to nail the 4.5. But you just got to try to pull it back and do one step at a time. And this is what I'm saying about being multifaceted. When I have things outside the pool, when I get injured and I can't do the thing that I love every day, you have other things that you love to do that you can stay balanced. So when I can't dive, I put more of a mental focus onto my work.
That's awesome. No, I really enjoy that. Something that's made you laugh in the last couple of weeks. What is it?
I think my dad's always pretty funny. I always give him a call about whatever we're doing. He seems to have a good laugh.
In what way?
Is
he like your typical Aussie bogan builder, or?
Yeah, to a degree.
Yeah.
He's quite witty. Kind of funny. And he does see, whether it's diving or socials, he does see it all as a game, which even the building game he's in, you know. So
yep.
I think having that perspective is kind of, he comes up with a few good one-liners. Even my team, I find my team quite funny. We have a good laugh along the way. Kind of taking the piss. I think that's one of my favourites. Yeah.
I noticed that the first time we went out driving, you're definitely a take the piss sort of guy. I think we'll fucking around filming like what was it? What type of coffee does Olympic athlete have?
You got to have a crack.
You had a mocha, and everyone was taking the piss out of you. Yeah.
And I love having a laugh at myself. Like the other day, I was with one of the ministers, and we were walking through this building. I just like collect the door. I just like walk into the door. And I find that funny. You know, you got to have a laugh at yourself. Like you do your best. And I feel like Australians love that. You know, you go out there, you work hard, you do your best. Sometimes you mess it up, and it's kind of funny too. So I kind of have this outlook on life as whatever happens is good. If it's good, it's cool. If I completely butcher it, it's funny. You know, you just can't lose. And that's the way I look at everything.
That's very cool. What inspires you with your content? Like who is it that inspires you? Who do you watch? Where do you get your ideas from? Like where does the inspiration for all the content that you produce come from?
My mind just goes a million miles an hour every second of the day I'm awake. Like I'm always thinking, whether it's about my diving or the content, thinking of new ideas, new ways to film, new ways to edit, new ways to represent an idea. How could I explain this situation? How can I share that? I enjoy the game, and similar to my diving, if I dive, I want to be the best. If I'm making content, I want to be one of the best content creators. And I think being in an industry that's fun and that I enjoy, and then that drive to be the best every day, that's what motivates me. I do look at people like Mr. Beast and Diver CEO Stephen Bartlett. I think these people do an incredible job, and I want to continue to be better, to create better content for the people that watch it and try to be the best that I can.
What is it that you see in those creators? Like you mentioned Stephen Bartlett, you mentioned Mr. Beast. What is it about their content that you just go, wow, they're like setting the standard?
I think it's the individual. I look at Jimmy and his story. No one gave him anything. He was persistent from the ground up. He worked. He learnt, he worked, he went through all the rubbish until he eventually figured it out and was successful, and then doubled down, reinvested everything that he made into YouTube. So I think Jimmy is an individual I find so inspiring, that he worked from the ground up, invested in himself, and made it all the way. And same with Stephen Bartlett, the Diver CEO, someone who invested in themselves and for the long game. And I think that's the way you got to look at anything if you want to be successful. I don't go into a diving session, have a bad day, and think, oh, this diving thing's not for me. You look at it and nearly like a 10-year thing. It's like, well, I'm just going to suck some days. Some days this isn't going to work. And I think these guys did that in social media. They just consistently tried to get better. I think that's what it takes. So I respect that a lot.
Is that just in their long form, short form?
Everything. Just them as an individual.
Okay. So it's more their story and how they operate as a person more than the content that they produce, or both?
I think them as an individual, because that's what allows them to produce the content.
That's very cool. When you're looking at content, so say you're going to create a piece of content for TikTok, what is it that you think about? Like, run me through the creative process of a piece of content.
say I have an idea. Just for example, last night I was explaining the fact that I'm not meant to sit down. Listen, I'm not meant to sit down like this at the moment.
We could have done a standing up podcast.
It's fine.
Or a lying down podcast. We could have just lied on the ground.
Yeah, because I can get my legs out. It's okay. But the physios don't want me sitting like that because it's not good for my back. That's why I drop a knee. But I'm meant to like sit on my knees at my desk and work from like my knees, because that way I'm not sitting throughout the day. So it kind of makes my back get better quicker.
Yep.
And yeah, it's just something I got to do, which sucks.
So with the content, so you were talking about the content piece?
Oh yeah, so the content piece. I was like, all right, well, I'm going to share the fact that I have to kneel at my desk, and then I'll just get a few shots, do my thing, and just put it up. I try not to overthink anything. A lot of the time it's content that you nearly think twice about posting. You're like, oh, will this do any good? Sometimes that does the best because it's the most relatable. So I think sharing moments of your day, sharing the way you do things, and sharing as much as you can, because the more you share, the more you understand what works and the more you can double down. So like for my diving videos, when I found out that they worked really well, you double down, triple down. You build systems to produce these videos. Like I used to film 1 or 2 diving videos a session. I might get, a clip after training and I would use that. And I thought, wait a minute, what if I bring my guys in to shoot the whole session? We get 60 to 100 dives. What if we do that a few days a week? And then we edit all those up and you've got hundreds of videos to distribute rather than one. So I think being able to learn too, different things. But I'm always thinking of ideas, always.
So the volume game is the important game versus the like high quality, highly scripted, highly edited. It's more like, let's just film what I'm doing, film my life, let's just get it out and let's just see what people like, and then let's double down on that and go hard on that piece of content.
Yeah, if you're making 1,000 videos that flop, change it. Like anything is possible if you're willing to learn and pivot. So for example, the diving videos, they're working at the moment, but if they change or something changes, you got to move with it. So I think trying different things to see what works. When you find something that works, double down. If you haven't found something that works, you just got to keep trying till something does, because it will. Tony Robbins said something I love. He said, most people say they've tried everything and it didn't work. Most of the time, they've tried 1 or 2 things 3 or 4 times and it didn't work. Had you tried everything, it would work. So I try to remind myself of this when I'm like, oh, it's not working. This isn't working. Oh, this dive is not working. I'm just not good at it. You're like, no, there is a way to be good at it. You just got to find it. And at the moment, you haven't found it. So I find that personally reassuring.
That's so true. It's I say it all the time to our community, because people say that all the time, right? I've tried everything. And I say, you've tried everything except the thing that works. So just keep going. Like, it's that simple, right? Like,
the thing that works.
Yeah, you've tried everything except the thing that works. So just go figure that shit out.
Yeah. And sometimes it's just, throwing shit at the wall. Just try and figure it out. You just got to figure it out. And that takes time. And it changes. Sometimes you figure it out and it stops working. You got to figure it out again. Yeah. But I just try to remind myself of that. Had I tried everything, it would work.
What do you do to keep the team adaptable? Because, I mean, if it's just you, that's easy to say that and you can adapt. But when you've got a team of people that you're building around you now, how do you keep them in that same mindset of like, this did work, but it doesn't work now. So like, we've got to move. Yep. And it can't take 6 months to move. Like, we got to move today.
I think being a high performer with my diving has allowed me to surround myself with other highly driven, highly motivated people that are willing to learn. Mm-hmm. So my team are very similar to me. So sometimes they'll throw ideas back at me. Have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? Oh yeah, I tried this for you. Let me know what you think. They're all on the same page as me. And I think building that team around me comes from being that kind of person myself. And then you attract those like-minded people. And when you have people like-minded working on a task, it's amazing what you can achieve. So I think if you want to make a good team, just trying to be better yourself helps. And then try to surround yourself with other people who are trying to be better.
That's awesome. Now, finally, just to wrap up, what's one quote or one thought that you have running through your mind consistently? Like, what's the one thing that you keep like rephrasing to yourself over and over and over again, whether it's in diving, whether it's in, your social media? What is it?
I think I always remind myself, persistency wins all the time. There's been divers that are way better than I am that didn't make the Olympics. Not because they weren't good enough. A lot of the time because they quit or they retired or they gave up before they made it. So think 99% of it in everything is just not giving up. Even content. Like I'm not the greatest editor in the world. I'm not like the most creative guy ever, you know? I wasn't very good at arts in school, but being persistent outworks everything. Because if you never give up, eventually, even by sheer luck, you'll figure it out.
Yeah, that's awesome. What's the next step for you? What's the next stage of your life? What does it look like? Where are you moving to?
I've been doing more podcast stuff, which I enjoy. Building more content around my day-to-day life. I want to get people to come film like Gary Vee, people to come around with me doing things like that. I enjoy that. I find that fun. I want to do more of that. That excites me. So I want to keep diving, keep making content, and continue to learn and progress in both those industries. So these are what I do. I dive, I make content. I want to be the best at those things. So every day, every week, every month, every year, that's what I put my focus towards. And that makes my whole life exciting and fun, and a life that I wake up in the morning and I'm driven to get into and keep going. That keeps me motivated.
For those who are listening right now who are off track or, you know, aren't on the path, because you keep mentioning how important it is for you to be in, I guess, that flow state of like, I just enjoy what I do, whether it's diving, whether it's the social media, whether it's the podcasting, whether it's media.
And not all parts. As I said, I don't like riding the bike, but I enjoy diving, and to dive, I've got to ride the bike, you know?
Yep.
So
how important, well, let me come back. Sorry. If someone's sitting there and they're going, I'm not where I want to be, I'm frustrated, shit's tough, life's a slog, what advice would you give them to get back on track and to start to figure out how to create more of that life that they enjoy?
You got to start so small, so small. Why the goal to walk around the block today? Like this could be anyone. Why the goal? Okay, I want to walk around the block today. That's my goal. You walk around the block. That's a successful day. You achieved your goal. You got to draw it right back to the real basic things. That's what I do when I have my biggest failures. Right back to what can I do? Start writing that plan. Same with now. My back's injured. I can't dive. All I can do are these ab exercises. They're really boring, but I know it's going to achieve my big dream of getting back in the pool. So if you're sitting at home and you're struggling and you don't feel like you're moving in the right direction, start with the smallest thing. Write a goal. Might even be to eat an apple today. And then maybe you can eat, maybe tomorrow write a goal to eat an apple, walk around the block. Then maybe the next day write a goal to go to the gym. Or start researching what you'd like to do. You don't even have to start yet. Start researching it. I think starting as small as you can. And that can help progress you move forward, because that momentum, it's like a snowball effect. The smallest things ever are what achieves the biggest dreams all the time.
From what you've seen, do you believe that too many people overcomplicate things, like things aren't working so they add more on, whereas what you're saying is strip it all back? Just strip it back, start small, get those wins on the board, and then make things more complicated. Is that a good summary of it? And then, you know, is that something that you see in a lot of other athletes that you've been around as well? Is that they always just strip shit back, not keep adding more and more crap in when things aren't working?
Yeah, even something as complex as a dive. I try to strip it right back to 2 key words, like the 4.5, like quick squeeze. That's all I think about on something that's extremely complicated. So whether it's business, diving, life, I try to keep things as simple as possible. But even I overcomplicate things all the time. I overthink them. I think about how difficult it is to set up this process, and then I just start doing it and you realize, oh, it's actually really simple. But I thought it was extremely difficult. Or you procrastinate because you overthink certain things. So I try to think about 2 things. Number 1, really simplify it. The other thing, when I get overwhelmed about doing anything, I think about what's the worst job I could possibly do. Like, just for example, I wanted to make a shirt. What's the worst shirt I could make? You know, like how bad could I do? And you're like, oh, I'll just do that, you know? Start at the bottom. And then once you start doing it, you end up, your perfectionism kicks in. You end up doing an incredibly good job, but you've started at the lowest barrier to entry. I think that's what gets me over the line with so many things. What's the simplest version I could start with? And just start on that.
That's awesome. Final words for those who are watching right now who just want to take it to the next level. what's the one piece of advice you'd give them?
My coach explained something to me when I was at training, and I'm trying to push as hard as I can every day. He said, imagine you're going down a mountain and you're skiing. If you make any major turns, sometimes you'll just spin out and you'll crash. Most of the time, everyone's doing a good job, and all you need is just those small pivots down the mountain to move from a rock, to move from a tree, to speed up. It's those small movements. So I would say, look at the small things that you can improve, and that will have the biggest effect. It's also easier to look at. You don't need to make this ginormous goal that's, down the line. Just think about those small things that you can do to get you there. And I goal set all the time, but I put them on my wall, and then I focus on the daily tasks to get there.
That's awesome. Love it. Well, thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it. Thanks for coming down.
Good to see you, Mojo. Thanks
Awesome.
for having me on.
Thanks, Sam. Most people waste their life, and I just don't want you to be one of them.